This is the speedy man, Xavier Worthy, the fastest man to the end zone right away. His first touch, a Kansas City touchdown. Oh, man. Mahomes fires. Brought in. Xavier again. Worthy for a touchdown. Number one has 2 tonight.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. A very happy Friday. What a way to start the 2024 NFL season, guys. Connor Rogers, Matthew Berry, already back from Kansas City. Well-traveled man, Jay Croucher. Looking spry, young Matthew.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we got into the hotel like about 3:30 this morning.
Okay.
So I'm not responsible for anything I say today. Let's be clear.
One Diet Coke and we're so back.
Yeah, we're so back. By the way, this is not the only part you'll see me today. Again, tonight on Peacock exclusively, I'm a company man, we've got Eagles-Packers.
It's a Berry fiesta.
It is
We're gonna
national television.
him.
Yeah.
Just roll him out there. What do you got for us for a parlay tonight?
Yeah.
Pull a lever.
This is good.
Basically.
I'm going to be tuning in. I'm going to be watching you very closely on that
Thank
broadcast.
you.
Me too.
man.
Appreciate
See how your
it.
energy
It'll be
levels
theater
are.
entertainment.
Yeah.
We should actually get together.
Yes.
Yeah.
There you
It'd
go.
be great.
Just,
We get the Berries,
hit
that's
him up.
right.
Hit him up on the text string. I'm not a part of.
You love to see it. All right. Listen, we're one game down. It's going to be a busy week here, busy weekend, especially under the Peacock banner. We'll break down the next 2 games, Packers, Eagles, Rams, Lions. We'll also go through the highest point total games of the entire weekend. But, guys, listen, we got to start with last night. That's why we're jumping right into the Roto World player news. Ravens-Chiefs thriller to kick us off. And, Matthew.
And you see it right there. Look, like, listen, if everyone that has Isaiah Likely on their bench, you drink free
a lot of
today.
people probably.
I mean, like, he's also available in a lot of leagues as well. He wasn't drafted in a ton of leagues, but there are certain people, if you did draft him, no one started him last night, almost no one. I started him in one league, but only because I was truly desperate. Like, you know, and that's a dynasty league where Hawkinson's out for half the year, and my choices are Likely or Theo Johnson. So I started Isaiah Likely. Anyway, you guys all drink free today if Isaiah Likely was on your bench.
All right. Well, we'll get to Likely in just a bit,
Yeah.
but how about Xavier Worthy's, welcome to the NFL?
Dude.
It catches 2 or 3 passes, 47 yards and touchdown, but also that rushing score on the end around. The speed was insane.
Credit Andy Reid for putting his rookies in a position to succeed. Hey, what do you do? Let me keep it simple. Again, I think everyone's going to look at the total fantasy points and be like, he touched the ball 3 times. Like, I want to caution a little. Like, it's unbelievable. Like the speed is on display. Again, this is a player that at the NFL Combine ran the fastest time in NFL history. Like, it is speed for days. I mean, you just see him just blowing by guys right there. If you're watching us on Peacock, you just sort of see it there. And then, of course, this is just a thing of beauty. It's a little bit of a blown coverage or just blows by him, but he's wide open. Mahomes hits him in stride. Easy touchdown for Xavier Worthy. But again, at the end of the day, he got 3 targets. So this is very exciting. I think he's been drafted in almost every fantasy league. I'm not ready to say like he's, a must start going forward, but certainly you feel really good about Worthy if he's on your team.
Yeah, you'd rather see this. Leading up to the draft, before he was taken by the Chiefs, I had heard so much that Andy Reid looked at him and said, I can use him like I used Deshaun Jackson in the past. And we got an early glimpse of that week 1. We also got to hear from his quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, who had a lot of great things to say about Xavier Worthy. Take a listen.
Man, it was crazy. We ran that in the preseason. I fumbled. So, I mean, sure, it was kind of bad, but just being able for them to have that trust in me, and I told Coach Nagy, I think this player is going to score, and it happened. So, it was just an amazing moment, just my first touch being a touchdown in the field.
He's so cool, calm, and collected, like, all the time. Like, you would never even see the excitement on him. But, he goes out there and makes plays. Obviously, we want to continue to use him more and more. But I thought he had a great day today, making big plays and big moments. And it was good to get the whole offense going and kind of seeing where everybody's at.
Even Tyreek Hill taking notice. That boy rolling. Oh, my God. Yeah, it's a good start for Xavier Worthy. That's why he was drafted. He's fast.
100%. And it's interesting to see, okay, Andy Reid says I can use him like I used Deshaun Jackson. Okay, great. Deshaun Jackson was definitely a fantasy asset. He wasn't, best wide receiver in fantasy football. And because he is big play dependent, he was somewhat inconsistent. Again, I don't want to totally pump the brakes because he's Xavier Worthy is obviously incredibly fast, a lot of raw talent there, and he's in arguably the best offense in football with the best quarterback in football and one of, not the best play designer. So they're going to use him, and there's going to be fantasy opportunity for Xavier Worthy, but I don't want people to overreact to 3 touches. In a game in which Travis Kelce really didn't do much. Yes, Pacheco got the touchdown, but there were, and by the way, Hollywood Brown is coming back as well, and so you know what I mean? This was awesome and amazing, and Xavier Worthy is absolutely going to be a thing this year, and he's going to be a viable fantasy starter, but I'm not ready to say, top 10, I think some of the stuff I've seen online is a little over the top.
Got a lot of texts about Xavier Worthy in the past 24 hours, and I would try and trade him. Honestly, it seems like he's never going to have more value at the moment in terms of just as a fantasy asset. Yeah, and the perception, the reality is he had 3 targets in a game that Hollywood Brown didn't play in. And realistically, it's going to be Rice, Kelce, probably Hollywood Brown over Xavier Worthy. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see how that shakes out. But then Pacheco as well. There are a lot of mouths to feed in this offense. And Worthy has I don't think, any real chance to be a top 2 receiving option for Mahomes, just with Kelce and Rice there. So, yeah, he'll have games, I'm sure. And look, he's going to have a game where he catches a 75-yard touchdown pass. That is going to happen. Sure. That didn't happen last night. And he's going to have these games where he's a monster, but the usage is going to be pretty low, I think.
It might be Rashid Shaheed type at times, and at least the beginning.
That's a good call, too.
Right?
That's a very good call.
Get the 2 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown weeks.
Yeah.
You're also going to have weeks, and you brought this up, Jay. Rashee Rice, 7 catches, 9 targets, over 100 yards. It was fascinating to watch, and unfortunately the Ravens didn't catch on to this too much, how the Chiefs would move him around to get him matched up with a linebacker, notably Roquan Smith, and just throw that slant to him, and it was almost spamming this play, how easy it was for them.
Yep, and I think that's the key with Rice, is that it's his diversity as a receiver and the fact they can move him around the formation, and also the fact that he was able to produce this type of game, go 7 receptions for 103 yards without having to catch a deep bomb. It was just so consistent. It seems like it's going to be very repeatable. And this was just a continuation of what we saw in the second half of last season, where Rice kind of became the guy, even over Kelce to an extent. So I think Rashee Rice is clearly going to be the guy for Mahomes. We talked about the suspension ad nauseum. Mike Florio talked about this on the broadcast, unlikely probably to be suspended this year. This is the number 1 guy for Patrick Mahomes in an offense, and we'll talk about Mahomes in a sec, an offense that looks back.
On the preseason love list for a reason. We've talked about him, to your point, ad nauseum. We're not worried about the suspension. You should draft him. He's going too late in drafts, and this is what you see. 6 or more receptions now in 9 of the last 11 games. He cashed his over prop. Good call by you, Connor, on the show yesterday as well, where you basically said, give me the
61.5.
Right.
You're not going to get that for long with Rashee
Rice.
No,
you certainly are not. And, it's interesting. This is exactly what Andy Reid, when I spoke to Andy Reid in the definitive Andy Reid interview in the Combine last year. No, but also there's a
box set DVD out
now.
Yeah,
exactly, 100%. 4-hour special on Peacock breaking it all down. My 5-minute interview with Coach Reid. But no, in all seriousness, I asked Andy Reid about Rashee Rice, and to your point about, Jay, the second half of the year, and he said basically once Rashee Rice, the sounds insane, but once he learned Travis Kelce's route tree, he basically said we were at the beginning of the year we could only play him outside, but once he learned to come inside and he was able to do basically everything that Kelce could do inside in addition to the outside, it meant they could move him around. And now you have to account for Kelce and Rashee Rice. And a lot of times what he said is they would often run the sort of the same route or start in the same spot and break off. And so it's just, if you're a defense, to your point about putting him on Roquan Smith or whatever, it was like a chess match in terms of how many mismatches they created for Rashee Rice last night. And it was pitch and catch stuff. It was just easy.
It's trusted by Mahomes. And that is fantasy gold, right? If you're trusted by a top 5 quarterback, in fantasy gold.
To me, also, it's all about the repeatability. Look at the catches that he's getting. It's short, intermediate, it's wide open. Compare that to, say, Mike Evans is going to have to be dependent on catching 50-50 deep balls down the sideline from Baker Mayfield on 3rd down, very high variance plays. I think Rashee Rice is just going to produce week in, week out. He has such a high floor because of his route tree.
If I were drafting today for the rest of the season, Rashee Rice is a top 10 fantasy wide receiver. He is I think he is going to be, if you were 100%, I guarantee you he plays all 17 games this year. And again, injuries can happen, and there's still a slight chance that the NFL suspends one of the personal conduct possibly. But as we've talked about ad nauseum, and Florio also said on the show last night, like, highly unlikely that happens until the court case happens. There's not even a court case set. There's like one thing that's happening in December that as part of the case. So it's if there's a suspension coming, it'll be 2025. If I was drafting today, he's in that Garrett Wilson, A.J. Brown, top 10-ish wide receiver range.
Yeah, where like Puka was going.
I'd take him above
Puka.
I'd take him above Mike Evans.
Yeah, I mean, rest of the season, Rashee Rice or Chris Olave.
Oh, I'm taking Rashee Rice.
Yeah,
I just don't trust the Saints' offensive line with Carr.
But that's
something that's Olave.
I don't think Derek Carr's going to last the season. It's going to Spencer Rattler.
That's the argument, though.
Yeah.
That's my point, right? Exactly. I mean, Olave was going like top 12. To your point about like Puka, same sort of thing. Like it's just it's all sort of like right there.
Yep. I take him after Garrett Wilson, A.J. Brown. Take him before Olave and Evans and Puka. Yep.
Matthew, a serviceable night from Patrick Mahomes fantasy-wise, 15.1 points. He didn't really run a lot, which is probably the key to him not having a big night. Obviously, Lamar had the huge night, but very
only
efficient.
only the one passing touchdown. That's the thing. I mean,
right.
I think they faltered a couple of times in the red zone. Butker gets a couple of field goals, and the Xavier Worthy reverse had that play happen in front of Mahomes,
Just
where he pitches it in
pass.
front
I know.
instead of pitching it back.
Looks a lot
Got to
different.
get the Aaron Rodgers playbook. Aaron knows to throw that pass forward.
Yep.
But yeah, I think Mahomes' game is a perfect illustration of how sometimes you need to take a look under the hood of the box score, because the box score doesn't look amazing. He's like 291 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, gets sacked a couple of times. But Mahomes, on an efficiency basis, because they only had the ball for 26 minutes.
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? Because the Ravens took like 8 minutes off the clock in that first drive. Mahomes last night was 0.42 EPA per play. Brock Purdy led the league last year at 0.34. Mahomes was at 0.13. Like, they were moving the ball, and to me, this is the biggest story out of last night. This Chiefs offense is back. Like, it is not going to be like last year. There is so much more space. You can just breathe.
It felt aggressive.
The O-line was better. He was pressured on 32% of dropbacks. Last year, 36%, and this Ravens defense is good, clearly above average. So I think Mahomes is going to be back on track to the guy he was 2 years ago when he walked in the MVP.
Yeah, it's super weird. Like, so I had for the opener, I had to do a 4-leg parlay. That was the requirement. And so and by the way, and it didn't hit. But parts of the ones that did, like, I took the over on Mahomes passing yards, that hit. I took the over. I took an alt line. I took the over on Pacheco yards from scrimmage, that hit. We'll talk about that in a sec. We'll talk about Pacheco, but like, I took the over on 1.5 passing touchdowns. I thought that was the easy one.
Yeah.
Like,
well, it should have hit. That was a drop.
Yeah, I mean, right, but it didn't. You know what I mean? Like that was, that and the Derrick Henry leg. I went 2 for 4. We'll talk about Derrick Henry in a second too. But that was my point. Was like, as I was building that parlay, I thought, all right, well, this is the chalk one. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I'm having to build a 4-leg parlay.
Yeah.
So let me, and then, but that's the one that didn't hit. Right? It should have. Right, to your point. Like, they had a number of opportunities. What are you going to do? That is why they call it gambling.
Indeed.
Let's look at the tight end situation. I don't think anybody would have guessed Noah Gray would outscore Travis Kelce. Now, it was narrow here. Kelce catches 3 of 4 targets for 34 yards. Noah Gray catches all 3 of his targets for 37 yards. Matthew, Kelce was out there. It's not like they were really limiting him. The ball just didn't come his way as much as we're used to seeing.
He played 88% of the snaps. They didn't need him. Like, if you're gonna. If Rashee Rice is going to be open on every stupid play, like,
throw to Rashee Rice.
Throw to Rashee Rice. It seemed like there was because there was a lack of Travis Kelce, there was a lack of Taylor Swift shots last night as well. I feel like we didn't see as much of Taylor.
There's a lot of season left.
Yeah, a lot of season left. I don't know.
There's a lot of dudes on this team now, and maybe it doesn't feel that way because there's a lot of the same cast as last year. But just adding Worthy and like, how's it going to look when Hollywood Brown's out there? I think that there's just such a wealth of options now that it's just going to be week by week. Like, what's the matchup? Last night the matchup was Rashee Rice going up against linebackers. Some weeks it's going to be Travis Kelce. Some weeks it's going to be deep balls to Worthy and Brown. Like, I just don't think there's going to be the consistency that has defined Kelce's output for like a decade.
Yeah, look, I think he's probably gets a little bit less because there are many more weapons in the emergence of Rice. I think he gets less targets this year, but do I think he still winds up as a top 5 fantasy tight end? I do. he's going to be more touchdown dependent this year than I think he has been in years past, because I don't think he's going to get as much volume in the passing game as possible. I thought the fact that he played 88% of the snaps is actually very encouraging. If Travis Kelce's out there for 88% of the snaps, more often than not, Mahomes is going to find him. He's Travis freaking Kelce. So, certainly not worried about Noah Gray. We'll talk about the tight end situation on the Ravens here in a second, but I'm not worried about Noah Gray. So, maybe slightly lower expectations for Travis Kelce, but I just sort of just wasn't a great day at the office because they didn't need him.
Yep, slight bump up for Rashee Rice. Well, a pretty big bump up for Rashee Rice, and Kelce goes down as a result a little bit.
Matthew,
but if you were drafting again today, Kelce still, maybe you take McBride over Kelce,
Yeah, I don't think.
Certainly not bumping Mark Andrews up over him.
No,
Right,
exactly.
right,
That's
right.
what I'm saying.
It's just one game.
one
Teams are
game.
going to start adjusting to Rashee Rice, and then who's that going to open things up for? Somebody
Exactly.
else, Travis Kelce.
Exactly.
Matthew,
Kelce's going to be fine.
Your 4-leg parlay might not have cashed, but more importantly, your fantasy football happy hour best bet did. Let's take a look back at that.
Justin Watson's going to be out there quite a bit. Again, all he needs is one. He's hit this number 7 of 9. He needs to hold on to it. Watson and the drops are always a challenge, but give me the over 15.5 receiving yards for Justin Watson.
Yeah, Matthew, I'm looking at these Chiefs wide receivers as well. I like the very creative thought of Justin Watson, especially at that low total. I'll take the chalk with Rashee Rice over 61.5 yards at -115. I mean, it's as simple as this, Jay. He's the number 1 wide receiver in their offense. They're not going to be careful with Travis Kelce week 1, but they'll be careful with him this season. I think Rashee Rice, in a couple weeks, this will be closer to 75.5, 80 yards a week. All he needed was 1.
There you go. Here it is. Look at this beautiful play. Look at this beautiful. Look at Justin Watson.
What was your reaction when you saw what number the receiver was?
That's 84. Let's go, baby. 25 yards. Boom. Cash. That's his only target, his only reception. But again, as I said, all he needed was 1. So easily cashed. It got up to 16.5 actually by game time. When we did the broadcast, it was 15.5. But either way, cashes easily. Justin Watson, there you go. You were close to drinking free, but then Isaiah Likely decided to have the game of his life on everyone's bench.
Glad we cut that video before we got to my pick of Derrick Henry over rushing yards, which did not hit. So you love when the gambling expert goes down and YouTube blokes win it. Yeah, we'll talk about Derrick Henry in a second, but. No, Justin Watson. I mean, he's a solid 4th option. He does the job. 4th, 5th, 6th option.
I think it's just the only, I don't think there's any fantasy takeaway here. All I was going to say is that sometimes, Jay, and I think you can speak to this, when you're betting player props, like the Rashee Rices, the Derrick Henrys, the Lamars, the Mahomes, like those are the ones that get so much attention and everything like that. But sometimes the value is found in defensive props or like the 5th wide receiver. One play. Like
they're one-play props.
Like I'm just exactly.
The best prop I bet all season last year was a Calvin Austin prop, which was just way off. Like that's the kind of stuff that you dig deep in the weeds, you find it.
Yeah, there you go. So that's his point. Is just keep scrolling. When you're in the app, when you're in the DraftKings app, just scroll down a little bit further. Keep scrolling because those lines aren't nearly as scrutinized. They're not nearly as bet. And I think there's more of an edge that you kind of get there.
Our last bit on the Chiefs, Isaiah Pacheco, 15 carries, 45 yards. He does get the touchdown. He adds 2 catches for 33 yards here, Jay. So Pacheco, kind of really as advertised with almost 16 fantasy points.
Yeah, and I think the key stat here is nothing to do with Pacheco's line in particular. It's 2 carries for Carson Steele. That's it. This is Pacheco's backfield of the running back carries, 15 Pacheco, 2 Steele. And look, like I mentioned, the Chiefs only had the ball for 26 minutes. Normally, they're going to have the ball for greater than 30 minutes. They're going to have the ball the majority of the time, and they're going to go up against a rushing defense that isn't as fearsome as Baltimore's. So I think very good signs for Pacheco overall. Even though he didn't have the rushing outburst, the volume is more predictable going forward, and it bodes very well.
78 total yards here. He got 3 targets in the passing game. There's a little bit of Samaje Perine out there as well. Be interesting to see if his role expands as well. But, I mean, there were 20 running back touches in this game, and Isaiah Pacheco got 17 of them. The other thing that, 2 for 33 in the passing game, 78 total yards, as I mentioned. But the other point is that the one target that he missed, Mahomes sort of overthrew him a little bit. He was streaking down the sideline. Yeah. But again, if they connect on that play, and more often than not, they're gonna, the day is much bigger for Isaiah Pacheco.
Yep.
Moving over to the Ravens.
He walks into the end zone, and by the way, my over on the passing touchdowns cashes as well. And I have a lot of Isaiah Pacheco. As we know, Isaiah Pacheco was my number 2 runner-up for Ride or Die this year. I have a lot of Pacheco. I have a lot of Rice, a lot of Pacheco. It would have been nice, but what are you going to do? Still a solid day at the office. he's got the backfield to himself.
Maybe the most noteworthy fantasy player in this game ends up being Isaiah Likely, over 26 points. So we got to hear from his coach after the game on just how incredible his standout performance was.
Oh, I think Isaiah played just a great football game, a courageous game. I made so many plays, especially down the stretch, play after play. I put Lamar, obviously, in the same category. All those guys. I mean, those guys were making plays and fighting. The offensive line, I thought, did a heck of a job out there. A lot of question marks that, the pundits and the prognosticators had about the offensive line, saying that with that offensive line we couldn't do anything. And to see the way they went out there and played against that defense, I thought was pretty impressive. And that's a challenge, especially in this environment. Communication, and there were problems on both sides. But I thought Isaiah played a great football game. I was proud of him and a lot of other guys too.
9 catches, Matthew, for 111 yards and a touchdown for a guy that's not even on a ton of fantasy rosters. And if he is, he's really almost a handcuffed tight end to Mark Andrews at times.
1,000%. Plays 70% of the snaps. Last year, when Mark Andrews was active, he played just 22% of the snaps. So the preseason rumors of, hey, they're going to use more 2 tight end sets this year, that absolutely happens as well. The crazy part here, obviously the 30% target share is sort of insane. But I think what's important here is Mark Andrews. Like I don't think we can talk about Isaiah Likely without talking about Mark Andrews. And so Mark Andrews, by the way, ran 38 routes last night. He had a 72% snap rate. If you go back and look historically, Mark Andrews has never been that particularly effective against Steve Spagnuolo's defense. Like, I think they made I go back and watch the film, right? I can only watch the game broadcast. But the fact is that my expectation is when I go back and look at sort of the all-22 is that we're going to see a concerted effort to take Mark Andrews out of this game. The other thing is that remember Mark Andrews had that bicycle he had the accident and he missed a couple of weeks in August. So he's only been back at practice. So is there a chance that maybe he's not fully into game shape, maybe that he's still not 100% healthy and he was just out there, that there was a little bit of a decoy there? Lamar's like, all right, who's open? Oh, all right, they're bracketing Mark Andrews, they're doubling him, they're paying a lot of attention. Okay, they don't care about Isaiah Likely, let me just hit him. Yeah. So there's 2 sides of the story here, right? And so let's break this down. Number one is whoa, Isaiah Likely, that was amazing. Are we all rushing the waiver wire to pick this guy up? Are we blowing all of our fab on Isaiah Likely? Is there a changing of the guard for the Ravens starting tight end that you want? And then the other thing is oh my God, I used a top 4 tight end pick on Mark Andrews this year. Am I totally screwed? What's going on? And I think the answer is both yes and no. I don't mean to fence it a little bit here. I think there is a chance we have seen Isaiah Likely's best game of the year. Just seriously, 26 fantasy points, 9 for 111 and 1 touchdown, assuming health for Mark Andrews. There's a chance this is his best game of the year. History is filled with fantasy football people that rush out and grab somebody after a huge week 1. David Tyree is sort of the poster boy for that, Shout out to Frisman Jackson, wherever you are, right? The history is filled with fantasy football managers that go out after week 1 and then just, it falls apart. But Isaiah Likely, again, the fact that he played 70% of the snaps, the fact that he had such a massive target share, 30%, and he got 2 end zone targets, 3 red zone targets, looked like he was done for the season at one point at the very end of the game and then came back after a play, I think, really bodes well, obviously. For him, he's clearly earned a lot more playing time, but I don't think Isaiah Likely is going to be as good as this for the rest of the season, and I don't think Mark Andrews is going to be nearly this bad, guys.
What percentage? Let's say they both stay healthy. What percentage chance do you think that Isaiah Likely outperforms Mark Andrews this season? Do you think it's 10%, or do you think it's more 40%?
I think it's more 35.
Okay, well that's pretty big considering where these guys went in drafts. And I agree. I think to me the problem, Mark Andrews just didn't look good out there.
No,
he looked like he had the turning circle of the Titanic. Meanwhile, Isaiah Likely looked explosive. He's getting down the field. Lamar is looking for him with the game on the line in the final play. So I think that I would still. It's 1 week. You still have to regress to everything we knew before, so you still make Mark Andrews the favorite. But there's a very, very real chance that Isaiah Likely is the guy.
Yeah, or that it's more of a 2 tight end set. Again, could we see the best example I can think of is Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez, when both guys were productive fantasy tight ends for the Patriots. Could you see a scenario like that where like we think this is going to be one of the better offenses in the NFL. They moved the ball. You know, Lamar had a bad series down the stretch, you know, and once again they abandoned the run too quickly. But we'll talk about that in a second. But look, like Isaiah Likely is going to be a problem. He's going to be a matchup problem. And now, you know, they play the Raiders. They've got 10 days to prepare for the Raiders. And so Antonio Pierce and his staff now got to be, okay,
we got to worry about this guy.
We got to worry about this guy too. And hopefully that opens up some more stuff for Mark Andrews. That's the concern here is, did Mark Andrews just hit a wall, his body threw a lot and just like it is what it is? Or is it just like, again, this guy missed some training camp, he went through this big accident, and like give him a little bit more time to get into NFL game shape?
Yep. 92 PFF grade for Isaiah Likely last night, 50 for Mark Andrews. And I think that kind of matched the eye test, right? Likely's just a monster, and Mark Andrews just kind of, even when he got the ball, he looked very slow.
But if you have Mark Andrews, are you trying to sell low? Are you trying to unload it? Or you're just like, you know what, whatever, it was a bad day at the office, slow start, but I'm still sticking with him. He's still got the connection with Lamar Jackson. He's still going to be a red zone threat for one of the better offenses in football. The tight end position is still sort of dicey. Okay.
I think you just got to ride it out for now. Like, I don't think if you try and trade Mark Andrews now, it is more likely to get better. It can't really get worse, I would say, after that 1 week.
Yeah. Well, it can get worse for me because I have Mark Andrews on a couple of guillotine leagues, and so, you know.
See how that goes?
It would be bad if I go out in week 1 in a couple of these leagues, which is at the moment, you know, Mark Andrews with his goose egg isn't helping.
So a big night for Isaiah Likely, a big night in fantasy for Lamar Jackson because honestly, just the rushing.
Ridiculous.
You know, 122 rushing yards and a touchdown. Matthew, it felt like Lamar wasn't even sliding in this game. He was running into contact. I don't know if he's going to run like this all year. There was just a different edge to him in this game, I thought.
We were talking about it last night. You know, me and all the football night crew were just like, and the common refrain was like, he's not going to be able to make it through the season if he keeps running like that. He's not sliding. One of the things that was very noticeable in the pregame, we're on the field and we're watching them warm up, and Lamar's out there without pads. You know, like he's just warming up in sweat, and we're like, wow, he's lost weight. Like he looks great, but he's thin.
He looks more faster than ever, I thought.
Faster than ever, and he's talked about this. I mean, I think he lost 20 pounds in the offseason, and so, which is great. I mean, he looked very spry out there, obviously, and you know, looked great running, but also, if you keep taking all those hits, when you're already a smaller framed quarterback, and then you've lost 20 pounds, and you're taking hit after hit from linebackers, and like, you get nervous about can he last the entire season?
Yeah, and I haven't seen those Lamar spin moves since like 2019, what he was doing, and I'm not sure if it might be kind of a problem that he feels so spry, that he feels confident to make all these moves and to do all this. I would regress, though, to the idea that this was week 1, opening night against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in Arrowhead. The team just knocked him out and kind of embarrassed him in the AFC title game to an extent. And he was like, I am treating this like the Super Bowl. I don't think he's going to run the ball 16 times against the Raiders next week.
Remember the presser we showed during yesterday's show? It was very intense.
Yes.
Like Lamar Jackson's usually a pretty like upbeat, you know. He was locked in and saying, you know, there was a different edge to this game. And I think it's great for fantasy. I don't know if it's sustainable in terms of the NFL
He can't
season.
play like that. He can't play like that all season. He won't survive, to your point.
Yeah, and I think so he did two things that I think were pretty interesting, which were, number one is right, he was quick to tuck it and run last night. The other thing, he was quick to dump off to Justice Hill. And we got to get to the running game here for a second, but that was surprising. It just felt like it felt like at quick glance, I don't know if you guys felt the same way, that he quickly bailed out of his progressions to dump off the ball. I mean, Chris Jones had a field day. Like the line dominated. The Chiefs' defensive line dominated the Ravens' offensive line. He was on pressure quickly, but Lamar is so quick and so good at avoiding pressure that it felt like he just bailed to dump off to Justice Hill quicker than I feel like we're used to seeing.
Yeah, and John Harbaugh talked up the offensive line, which I think more just to give them confidence more than anything. I think there was, from the Ravens side, the biggest tell to me was their game plan and the fact that Lamar, I think in the first half, air yards per pass was 1. It was insanely low. And the fact that they didn't believe that they could hold up against the Chiefs D-line. And look, Chris Jones, Cole Aftis has gotten better. It's a good D-line. It's not like they're going up against Myles Garrett or Micah Parsons, D-lines of the Browns or the Cowboys.
Watt twice?
Yeah, exactly. So That is a concern, and I think it bodes poorly for the running game, which we're going to talk about.
In the NFL, you just don't
But
see
might bode
teams,
well for Justice Hill, who's likely going to be on the
dump
waiver
off
wire
market.
show next Tuesday.
You don't see teams rotate at right tackle a lot. They're putting their rookie Roger Rosengarten in.
I assume
That's
McCarr
not
was
an
hurt. But
That's not an NFL thing, and they seemed keen on trying that with a lot of new starters on this unit. Give them time to settle in. But I agree with you, Matthew. I mean, Justice Hill benefited from that greatly. He outscores Derrick Henry because he caught 6 passes for 52 yards, while Henry got the touchdown, but he only had 46 rushing yards.
Yeah, it's always a concern. I thought they would try to lean on the run game a little bit more. The Chiefs struggled against the run last year as well. And, again, the thing with Derrick Henry is that you have to, he only got 14 carries in this game. Derrick Henry needs 20. Like, if you're in the Derrick Henry business, that's the idea is that trying to tackle him in the first quarter is very different than trying to tackle him in the fourth. And so you need a guy. That's the point of Derrick Henry. It's just like you're going to wear the defense down. You're going to wear the defense down. Now, maybe the focus on Henry is what opened up some of the running lanes for Lamar Jackson. I mean, they were able to move the ball, but specifically Derrick Henry, he is traditionally been somewhat game script dependent because he's not a big part of the passing game. And so when it's a neutral game script, when a team is leading, great, you're just able to run, sort of at will. But when you're trailing, it's harder. I was encouraged by a couple of things. I was encouraged by the fact that he does score the touchdown. I was encouraged by the fact they actually threw the ball to him a couple times. They didn't connect any of those, but the fact that, if he's going to get 3 to 4 targets a game, I think he got 3 targets. I don't have the box score in front of me, but I think he got 2. Okay, but 2's more than you would have predicted at the beginning of the year. Okay.
Right.
He played less than 50% of the snaps, and he got 2 targets. Okay.
Yep.
Can we get that up to 3 or 4 a game? And, he catches a couple of those? That would be great.
Yep. A couple of weeks ago, I had a bet on Derrick Henry to win Offensive Player of the Year at 80-1, just because I thought he's going to lead the league in touchdowns. He'd be my favorite for that. New offense, just variance, him playing with Lamar as the cheat code, pulling him out of the box. Second snap of the season, Justice Hill comes in for second down. Bet's already dead. I just know instantly. I was hoping that Henry would be more 60, 65% of the snaps. He's not. And so it's just a narrower kind of path for him to provide value. Now, there are going to be better game script games. They were trailing pretty much the whole game. But it's going to get better for Derrick Henry. But I don't think he's going to return top 4, top 5 RB value if Justice Hill's going to be playing every third down, basically.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, though. I mean, again, but in a game in which he played less than 50% of the snaps and that the Ravens' offensive line was getting dominated and they were losing. They were down from basically minute 1.
Double-digit fantasy points still.
They still got you double-digit fantasy points.
It wasn't a dud of a night.
Right.
Absolute killer of a night.
You wake up, you'd rather have Derrick Henry on your team this morning than Mark Andrews.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yep,
or Travis Kelce. Just it's like we're talking about big stars. I mean, he had a better game than either of those 2 guys. So maybe it's because I have Derrick Henry in the League of Assholes.
In the PPR League of
Assholes.
In
the PPR League of Assholes. Maybe I'm trying to talk myself into it. I'm locked in a battle with Big Show, by the way.
I know.
We're all cheering for you.
Our show researcher, Big Show. His name's Chris, but we all call him Big Show.
He's Big Show.
So I'm in a battle with Big Show here for week 1, and Derrick Henry is on my team.
I'm looking at Big Show right now. He's licking his lips.
But I also
he just did the cutthroat.
I also have Rashee Rice in that league, so I'm feeling good about that.
I don't like that.
That's a good start for you
Good
as well.
start.
All right, let's jump over to tonight's game, exclusively on Peacock from Brazil. Packers, Eagles.
By the way, Zay Flowers is very good.
He's a screen merchant, but he is very good.
10 targets, he'll be fine.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Packers, Eagles. Here's Matthew's top-ranked players for the game. Let's start with the Eagles here, Matthew. How about a prediction for Saquon's first appearance in green?
I think Saquon gets into the end zone. I think they want to make that a thing. I am not a big anytime touchdown scoring bettor, but I do think that happens tonight. I do think they make an effort to get Saquon into the end zone as well. It's worth noting that each of the last 2 years, the Eagles starting running back, DeAndre Swift last year, Miles Sanders the year before, has finished top 5 in rushing yards per game, and Saquon Barkley, a lot better than either of those guys as well. When he's gotten at least 18 touches over the last 2 years, Saquon Barkley averages over 115 yards from scrimmage and over 20 fantasy points per game. I think you're going to see a lot of Saquon tonight as well. I know they've tried to improve their run defense in Green Bay, new defensive coordinator. I don't know that, Rome is going to be fixed in a day. So I'm expecting a big game from Saquon. I'm actually expecting a big game from both running backs because both running backs should touch the ball a lot. Again, it's Brazil. It's overseas. Who knows? It could be a weird game. But just sort of feel like Josh Jacobs, who really only has Emmanuel Wilson, behind him, and Saquon, who I know the Eagles want to sort of showcase and hey, well.
Sirianni's very excited.
Very excited. It's the offseason acquisition. It's their new shiny toy. So, I don't know if there's any takeaway because, everyone that has Saquon and Barkley on their team, you're starting them. There's no actionable item. But I do think, for those of you betting on the game, I do like Saquon anytime tonight.
Yep. Very excited for this game, Matthew. Excited to see a tired version of you on national television in front of millions.
Yeah, that's
in Brazil. He's leaving this desk and going to Brazil.
Exactly, flying to Brazil.
Excited for this matchup, and I agree with you on Saquon. Normally it's not the sharpest thing to give out anytime touchdown scorer bets, but there are situations, I think, where there is going to be an arbitrary skew and just the behavior of the team is going to shift to try and get a certain outcome. And I just think that with everything that's happened in the offseason, with coming from the Giants to the Eagles with the contract, with everything Sirianni has said, you really don't think they're giving Saquon 3 cracks at the goal line if they get first down at the 2? I just think that there will be a skew there, and he's minus 115. I think there is a greater than 55% chance that he gets in the end zone.
I hope they run the tush push with Saquon. Completely flip the world upside down.
Well, they've run that from that formation a couple of times last year where they would get into tush push formation and Hurts would take it and then immediately turn around and hand it to one of the guys in the backfield, and they'd go around the edge. So as well. So yeah. Anyway, you're starting Saquon, and I would bet him tonight.
Yep. On the Packers side of things, Jay, it feels like Matthew hinted at this. This is Josh Jacobs' backfield now after the multiple players they've lost in the preseason, and this is a team that wants to run the ball.
It is his backfield. His rushing attempts on DraftKings set at 16.5. Wow. His rushing prop is only 62.5. I'm just a little bit concerned with the idea that, Josh Jacobs is going to get, like we talked about, Pacheco got 15 of the 17 Kansas City running back carries. I'm not sure Jacobs is going to get that many. I understand there's no one behind him, but the way LaFleur has talked philosophically, I just don't believe he believes in workhorse running backs. And just to keep everyone fresh, he's going to use the other guys in that backfield. Now, it's clearly going to be Jacobs the vast majority, but I'm not sure that he's going to get the workload he got 2 years ago with the Raiders when he won the rushing title.
I actually don't love the... I might actually, if I probably wouldn't do the bet, but if I had to pick on the rushing attempts, I think I'd take the under.
I would take under 16.5
as well.
I'd take, but he's going to be used in the passing game as well. I think he's got a good shot at getting into the end zone as well, and to the extent. The other thing is that I think where Jordan Love and the Packers attack this Eagles defense is through the air. I think Jordan Love has a really nice game today again because you've got. What have we got? 33-year-old Darius Slay. You've got a couple of rookie corners as well, and they're making their NFL debut. I think that's where you try to attack, especially because you've got this amazing four-headed monster at wide receiver. You've got a mismatch in Luke Musgrave as well at tight end. Tucker Kraft probably not going to play tonight. So I don't know. I think it's a big Jordan Love night.
Our last preview here, Sunday Night Football, of course, on NBC and Peacock. Rams, Lions, a ton of points expected in this one, Jay. Where, you have to assume both Goff and Stafford might be streaming options in this game, right?
I think so. Just think back to the playoff game that they played in Wild Card Weekend when we saw this matchup. And Stafford was well over 300 yards. Suspect he's going to be throwing again. The total is the highest of the week at 52.5. And the thing with Goff didn't have a massive game against the Rams in that playoff game. But it's because they were leading the whole time, and he only had to throw the ball 27 times. He completed 22 of his passes, did whatever he needed to do. Darius Williams is on IR, going to be out for the Rams. Rams defense has a lot of questions. Everything's going to look a lot worse without Aaron Donald. Everyone's job was easier.
Linebacker's a big issue right now.
Big issue. Corner is an issue. Trey White is going to be their number one corner coming off an Achilles and all the injuries that he's dealt with. I just think guys like Kobe Turner, Byron Young, it's going to look a lot more difficult without Aaron Donald there.
Yeah, it'd be exciting to see what Jameson Williams does. But yes, I definitely like Jared Goff. I'm at QB 13 this week, so I think he's a borderline QB 1 for me as well. Obviously, you're starting LaPorta, and I'm on Ross St. Brown. Other side of the ball, I like Matthew Stafford. I think this game has shootout potential. You think back to the playoff game, and you don't want to say last year's indicative of this year. But again, to your point, I think the Rams defense is worse this year, and so we think Detroit, which means the Rams are going to have to be in catch-up mode and trying to throw. So. Especially with a healthy Kupp, and we expect Nakua to play as well. Demarcus Robinson be out there as well. Stafford, 367 yards. in the playoff loss last year to Detroit. I think he's a viable streamer. I'm at QB 14 this week.
Sunday Night Football is back, and it's a wild card rematch as Matt Stafford and the Rams head back to Detroit to take on Jared Goff and the Lions Sunday, 7 Eastern on NBC and Peacock.
Hey, start Jaden Reed tonight, by the way, as well. Really like Jaden Reed tonight. No team allowed more receptions and yards to the slot last year than the Philadelphia Eagles. Again, their nickel corners are rookies. Give me some Jaden Reed tonight.
Our previews continue after the break. What's on tap? Coming up next. The best part of making Friday plans is canceling them. Stay in and watch the Green Bay Packers and Philadelphia Eagles light up Friday night in Brazil. It all starts September 6th at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Peacock. What's on Tap is brought to you by Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the NFL, guys. We're taking a look at the matchups with the highest point totals going into the weekend. And Matthew, we start with Jaguars at Dolphins, where the Dolphins are favored by 3 points at home, the over-under at a whopping 49 points.
Yeah.
How are you ranking Jacksonville's wide receivers this week? This room is pretty crowded going into the year.
Well, you see it right there on your screen. Christian Kirk is the wide receiver I would prefer the most if I'm starting a Jags wide receiver. Miami allowed the 4th highest catch rate last year to the slot, which is where Kirk is going to line up the majority of the time against the Dolphins. 82% of his healthiest games since he's joined the Jaguars, he's gotten at least 6 targets, so I think he's also got the most familiarity with Trevor Lawrence. Again, you think about the outside where you've got Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas, the rookie. They're both fairly new, but Kirk has played with Lawrence for the last couple of years. So if you're starting a Jaguars wide receiver, I think it's Christian Kirk. We love Brian Thomas. I think he's going to play a ton of snaps, and I think he's going to have a very productive rookie year. I'm nervous about him in this game, Connor.
Jay, looking on the Miami side of things, status quo across the board. You got Raheem Mostert, of course, Devon Achane, and the 2 big wide receivers. But this is a good Jacksonville defense.
Yeah, I think the Jags defense will surprise. Tyreek Hill set at 97.5 receiving yards on DraftKings, so it's rolling that back with Tyreek expected to be the number 1 wide receiver this weekend. So I think with Miami, it really just all comes down to the running backs. I think you're starting Mostert, you're starting Achane. There's no real suspense around that, but this is fascinating. Like, it's going to be very interesting to see just what the snap and carry breakdown is, particularly for Achane.
I agree with that. I think actually I would start both guys in what we expect to be a high-scoring game, and the Dolphins are favored at home. I just want to mention real quickly something on Brian Thomas, who I prefer Brian Thomas to Gabe Davis, just going back there. But Dolphins' 6th fewest touchdown passes allowed on deep passes, which is Brian Thomas's game at this point. The other thing I want to say that I think is just sort of interesting to watch out for, how do they use Jonnu Smith, who's a very fast tight end, who was an acquisition that was sort of under the radar for the Dolphins this year. That's something that we're going to – Tyreek and Waddle, we know. We want to see the distribution of the running backs as well, but I do think that's an interesting storyline to watch as well in this game, is how do they use Jonnu Smith.
Jalen Wright going to be a thing, Connor?
If Mostert gets banged up, which historically he does. Yeah. I know last year was phenomenal, but wrong side of 30. If you drafted Mostert, you should have taken Jalen Wright at the end of your drafts in every league. That would be my advice, personally.
1,000% there. And the other last thing I'll say here is it'll be interesting to see on the Jaguar side of the ball is, does Travis Etienne get the massive workload that he got last year? There's been talk at the preseason they want to get Tank Bigsby more involved, but they also said that last year,
right?
And then Tank Bigsby did absolutely nothing. So is Tank Bigsby literally just going to be standing on the sideline and maybe he gets, under 5 touches, or is he a bigger part of this offense because they do want to limit somewhat? They don't want Etienne touching the ball 325 times again.
Our next game here, guys, Texans are favored by 3 points, traveling to Indy to take on the Colts. Another high point total, 48.5 points. Matthew, I know you really liked all 3 Texans wide receivers going into this season. Which one is set up to have the biggest week in this division matchup?
And I rank them Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell in that order, but I think all 3 have a very good chance at smashing. You think about Tank Dell, my, quote, lowest ranked of the 3 wide receivers. Against the Colts last year, 7 for 72 and a touchdown. I think this is going to be somewhat of track meet. I have C.J. Stroud as a top 5 fantasy play as well. Stephon Diggs, much as we talked about early on the show with Saquon Barkley, I think Stroud is going to want to sort of welcome Diggs to the team. They're going to play more in the slot than I think people realize as well. So I do think they make an effort to try to get Diggs into the end zone or a big splash play here or not. And then Nico Collins, of course, is Nico Collins. It's worth noting last year the Colts, bottom 10 in the NFL in terms of catch rate and receptions allowed on deep passes. So you can beat the Colts deep. They will take those shots. This game's indoors at Indianapolis on the turf. So I think it's a bit of a track meet, especially on the Texans side of the ball.
Jay, with the Colts right now, especially with Josh Downs banged up going into the season, is their offense in fantasy as narrow as, Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman?
I think so. I mean, Jonathan Taylor said it's 74.5 rushing yards in this matchup as an underdog. For a little context there, that's like 10 yards higher than Saquon Barkley in tonight's game.
Right.
So this is going to be, I think, Jonathan Taylor's offense. Just going back to the Texans for a second, on DraftKings, thought this is interesting. Nico Collins, 66.5 yards is his receiving prop. Diggs, 60.5, Tank Dell, 51.5. So very closely bunched together. I would have thought there might be a bit more separation between Collins and Diggs, for instance, but I think that is just the fact that we don't know how this is going to turn out. And I think Diggs is the big variable, right? Because if he is the guy from the first half of last season, then this is a completely different offense and complexion. If he's more the second half of the guy, then he could be the third guy in the pecking order.
Count me in the first half of the guy. I think Diggs has a nice year. I think Diggs, it's a 1-year prove-it deal. It's a
contract year.
It's a contract year. It's a 1-year prove-it deal. He doesn't have to have the entire passing offense on his shoulders. He's gonna he's gonna sing single coverage. He's gonna see like the second and third best cornerback on the team at certain times. So I think Diggs eats the chief ball officer. In front of the podcast.
That's right. He
Stephon
is the chief
Diggs.
ball officer.
He is the chief ball officer.
That.
Never forget.
Our final game here, guys, Cardinals at Buffalo, -6.5 for the Bills here. A touchdown favorite against a rebuilding and maybe resurging Arizona team that has a lot of talent now. The point total is at 47. Matthew, when you look at this Buffalo offense that we just talked about, Stephon Diggs off to Houston, can you trust any Buffalo pass catchers besides Dalton Kincaid?
Trust is a strong word, Connor. Again, we don't know how it's going to play out. Is Curtis Samuel active? How much does he play? He's been banged up as well, so we're waiting to sort of see kind of what the status is of Curtis Samuel. I think Khalil Shakir is somebody that I think is kind of interesting. It's worth noting, to your point, Shakir has his prop line on DraftKings 44.5, Keon Coleman 31.5, Curtis Samuel 27.5, and I think if we knew that Curtis Samuel wasn't playing in this game, obviously the Shakir prop line would go up. Look, James Cook made the love list. We talked about him a lot yesterday as well. Dalton Kincaid's going to get his. I don't know that I feel great about any Bills pass catcher other than Kincaid and Cook out of the backfield until we sort of see how this all plays out. But I will say that if I have to start a non-Dalton Kincaid pass catcher on the Bills this week, give me Khalil Shakir.
Yep. On that point, Dalton Kincaid set a 51.5 receiving yards. That's the highest prop of any Buffalo Bill. I mean, he has to be the only tight end in the league who has the highest receiving prop on his team, wide receivers included. So just goes to emphasize just how important Kincaid is to this offense.
Yeah, they tell you that week one lies a lot. I feel like we can learn a lot about this game.
Yeah.
We're going to see Marvin Harrison Jr. playing a meaningful game. We're going to see Kyler Murray with more weapons, your fantasy ride or die.
Yeah.
And we're going to see how the Bills use their variety of pass catchers.
Yeah, especially again, we've had jokes and some fun with like Greg Dortch, the human Dortch, but I am fascinated to see does he play if he plays 70% of the snaps, he plays 75% of the snaps, if he is their true slot guy, which is my expectation, and then it's really just Zay Flowers or Zay Jones, not Zay Flowers. Still in Baltimore mode. Right, so Michael Wilson or Zay Jones on the outside competing for that, opposite Marvin Harrison, but Dortch is the slot guy, that's my expectation. Dortch, again, who's available in a ton of leagues, not in a league I'm in, but he's available in a ton of other leagues, becomes really interesting, I'm telling you. But yeah, so my ride or die does, people are so excited about Trey Benson, but I'm a believer that James Conner is going to be a workhorse back. I think this game will be closer than people think. The Bills are almost a touchdown home favorite. I think the Bills play them tough. Give me the Bills to cover in this one. I'll just call that right now.
You mean the Cardinals?
Sorry, give me the Cardinals. Thank you. Sorry, I'm talking. Whatever. I'm in 3 hours sleep. Give me the Bills.
We're excited for the game tonight now.
What? Yeah. Yes. Oh my God. They really should send me to Brazil. The Bills are almost a touchdown home favorite, and I believe the Cardinals cover this game as a road dog.
I think the Cardinals are going to lose a lot of games 31-28 type of thing, where they're going to be very frisky. Their defense just isn't very good, but the offense is legitimate, and Kyler is legitimate, and it should keep them in a lot of games.
All right, fellas, we're taking our last break here, but when we're back, it's time for last call. We got our best bets, the player props we're eyeing for the big game in Brazil tonight. DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns, and new customers can bet $5 and get $250 in bonus bets instantly, plus get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium Download the app and use promo code BERRY when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. It's time for last call. Let's take a look at the most bet props for Packers Eagles Friday night in Brazil. Devontae Smith receptions over under is set at 4.5. The public is going over as the most bet. That is over 4.5 at -140. Saquon Barkley rushing yards alternate total of 50 plus is -265. 60 plus is -145. A.J. Brown receiving yards alternate 100 plus at +255. And then a long shot makes the board here, Jay. Christian Watson receiving yards 90 plus at 10-1. What do you like?
Yeah, I don't mind that. I like Christian Watson's the type of player you take alternate overs on, particularly with the Eagles secondary that really struggled last season. But I'm taking one that is not on the board there. Jalen Hurts over 32.5 pass attempts. Last season, the Packers' pass defense was 28th in the NFL in success rate allowed to passes. So I just think that this is a suspect pass defense, even with Xavier McKinney, new defensive coordinator. Let's see how it holds up. I just think that narrative-wise, gut sense, I think week one, Kellen Moore, this is Jalen Hurts' offense. No more Jason Kelce. This is Hurts now at the line of scrimmage. I think the game is going to be in his hands, and he throws the ball more than 32.5 times.
What about you, Matthew?
Fair enough. I'm also going quarterback, other side of the ball, and also going kind of an obscure one here. But give me the over on Jordan Love at 7.5 rushing yards. Give me the over on his rushing prop. First off, over at fantasylife.com, we project him for 12.5 rushing yards. So a significant edge there as well. He hit this number in 10 different games last year as well. And also you think about what Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles, generally likes to do. He likes to blitz. And so I think you'll see a lot of pressure. And what's Jordan Love going to do? He's going to try to scramble. He is more versatile. We played the clip on this show the other day. Maria Taylor sat down with Jordan Love, and he said, my favorite quarterback of all time growing up was Michael Vick. You can't tell me in the pre-interview before the game that Michael Vick's your favorite quarterback of all time, and then you can't get at least 8 rushing yards in this game. No. Give me the over 7.5 rushing yards for Jordan Love.
I'm on the Jordan Love prop bets as well. A little parlay here. 2+ passing touchdowns and 250+ yards. That's hovering around +112, 115, 110. So let's go with that to get that to plus money, fellas. Jordan Love.
There you go. Ahead of him. We love Jordan Love.
Who are you picking for the game, Matthew?
I got the Packers.
Okay.
I like the Packers. How about you?
They're getting 2 points. I'm taking the Packers.
I like the Packers as well.
There you go.
Congratulations to the Eagles.
Exactly right. All right, it's closing time. You can't stay here, but you also don't have to go home. I don't know.
See you in Brazil.
For Jay and Connor, we'll see you in Brazil tonight. Peace out. Sunday show. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotorWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched. Or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.